Okay, Rabotai, we're going to continue our class on the Kli Yakar. This week's Parashat VaYigash. Yosef finally reveals himself after a long time to his brothers in this week's Parashat, after the whole back and forth drama that they were having. And the brothers led by Yehuda showed that they were willing to give up everything to protect Binyamin. Binyamin was, of course, the full brother of Yosef. He was the remaining son of Rachel. He was arguably also the favorite son of Yaakov at the time. Yaakov didn't want to let him go at first. And Yosef was testing his other brothers to see if they would give up everything for Binyamin in order to fix their sin, because they didn't do that by Yosef. So by doing it with Binyamin now, that will be a fixture, a remedy for their sin of the past with Yosef. That's why Yosef was orchestrating all this trauma for them. And of course, Yehuda said, if you're not going to let Binyamin go, then we're going to kill all of you, right? In the Mefarshim, explained, we're ready to go to war right here, right now. Yosef was on an emotional high. He told all the Egyptians to leave. He broke out in tears and he finally said, Ani Yosef ha'od avi chai. I am Yosef. And the first thing he says is, ha'od avi chai. Is my father still alive? The question needs to be answered. Why is this the first thing he said? Why did he say Avi, my father, and not Abba? Because it's all their father at that point. They say Abba. When brothers are talking to each other, they don't say my father said this. They say father said this. Abba. Correct? Why didn't he say that? Why did he say Avi, my father? And the other question is, through their conversations back and forth, Yehuda mentioned their Yaakov, their father, many times. So obviously he was alive. Or so at least it seems. Why did Yosef ask this question? Says the Kli Yakar, even though they told him already that he's alive, many times in their conversations. Yosef thought in his mind, perhaps, Yosef thought maybe they were lying to me. Maybe they just made up a story about their father and how he's connected to Binyamin, and that if I keep Binyamin here, then their father's going to die, because Binyamin's soul is tied in with Yaakov's soul very deeply, and maybe it was just a way to stir up my mercy on Binyamin to let him go, but really Yaakov was dead. That's why he re-asked the question to confirm, was he really dead? But how did the brothers hear it? How did the brothers hear this statement? They didn't understand it this way. They thought instead, they thought that Yosef meant that not as a question, but actually as a rhetorical question, as a statement, as a way to put the knife in their hearts and twist it, so to speak, to rub their faces in the sin that they did so many years ago by selling Yosef. How? How so? Because Yosef, when he said the question, is my father still alive, he used the word Avi, my father. Why my father? Why didn't he say your father? Why didn't he say Abba? Because he was trying to say, he is my father. And if he was your father, you wouldn't have done what you did. You acted as if he's not your father by selling him, by selling Yosef. Because you know how much he was going to suffer, how much Yaakov suffered from that. And yet you did it anyway. You acted like he was not your father. And that's why Yosef used the word Avi, and that's how they heard it. They heard it as a rebuke against them, reminding them of their sin. Another reason for their confusion and their astonishment. He said, I am Yosef. He didn't say, I am Yosef, your brother. The first statement when he revealed himself was, Ani Yosef. I am Yosef. He didn't mention that he's their brother. And they thought that, why didn't he say that? Because perhaps he wasn't going to act like our brother. Maybe he was going to try to repay the cruelty back for what they did to him, just as they did many years before. And that's why when Yosef felt this, he repeated his statement. The next verse after that says, Yosef speaks again to them. And he says, Ani Yosef achichem. He says, person says, VaYigash, he approached them to make it a more personal conversation. And he said to them, Ani Yosef achichem. I am Yosef, your brother. Now he mentions the word your brother. Hashem echatem oti Mitzrayma, whom you have sold to Egypt. אף על פי שלפחות היה לכם למכור אותי לאיזו אומה אחרת שאינן שותפי זימה, כל כך מכל מקום אחיכם אני. Why did he mention that you sold me to Egypt? Because he said to them, he meant to them the following message, that yes, you sold me to not just any nation, a really bad one, Egypt, who was the capital of promiscuity and sexual misconduct and terrible sins. You sold me there. And nevertheless, Yosef continues and he says in the Torah, "Va'al yechar be'enechem, do not be angry in your eyes. Ki machartem oti hena, that you have sold me here to Egypt. Don't be so upset about it. Ki lemechya shelachani Elohim, because God sent me here for sustenance, for nourishment. Because of course he ended up with the whole plan with Paro, and he saved up all that food that fed the entire world at the time. He says that there's a connection here. Yosef was telling him there's a connection. Meaning, if you hadn't sold me to Egypt, none of this would happen. None of this positive would not have been derived from it. I would not have been able to achieve the position I achieved and conduct the plan that I did and save up all that food and save you guys' life now by providing you with food. I would not have been able to if you didn't send me to Egypt. Why specifically? What's the connection? Because it says over here, because it's all connected to where I used to work, he says. When you sold me to Egypt, I ended up in the house of Potiphar, the head butcher, not really butcher, but the executioner of Paro. And over there, of course, there was the wife of the master, Potiphar's wife, who found a liking to Yosef. She wanted him very badly. And we know the whole story that Yosef held himself against her. Now again, that story itself requires a huge analysis. We actually talk about it in the book. If you're interested in Chatzar Yosef, we spoke a whole very important chapter where they're discussing what that challenge was all about, how he overcame, how close he actually overcame, how close he came to actually failing there. In chapter 14, it's one of my favorite chapters, that's why I remember it. Very highly recommended. But nevertheless, of course, he's known that he overcame that challenge. He resisted her, and she was a very beautiful woman. Nevertheless, he resisted her. And because of that test that he overcame, that ordeal, that is why he was able to catapult himself. That is why God put him in the highest position. Why? It says here the Kli Yakar. He says, they say in Masechet Sotah, the Gemara says, Daf Dal Demot Bet, Kol Abal Eshet Ish, any man who has a relationship with a married woman who's not his wife, right? Lesof, at the end of the day, what happens? Says the Gemara, he will end up begging for a piece of bread and he won't find it. Terrible curse. Chas v'shalom, lo aleinu, lo alechem. But nevertheless, the Gemara says that's how terrible that sin is. And of course, from that fact, you can learn the opposite, right? The Gemara says a lot more by what it doesn't say than what it says. Because what it says means this and only this. But the reverse is a lot more options of what that could mean. And so the reverse of this formula, this equation would be that if a person doesn't sleep with a married woman and resists and overcomes that terrible temptation and that terrible sin, then not only will he not be poor looking for bread, he will actually be on a very, very high level financially, providing the bread. The complete opposite, right? And that's exactly what happened to Yosef. He was catapulted to the viceroy of Egypt, the superpower of the world at the time, saved up all the grain in the grain houses, and everyone in the world, as we'll see towards this week's Parashat, next week's, everyone in the world came and even sold themselves. They sold everything they had, all their assets, and they sold themselves to slavery in order to get food from him, because there was nothing else. Yosef became the richest man ever at that point. Says Yosef says, maybe if I wasn't sold to such a place, to Egypt, in order to overcome this exact test, then maybe somebody else would have been appointed in the leadership position to save you guys. But now that you sold me specifically to Egypt, to this terrible place of promiscuity, no one else merited to get this position besides me. Because of course, like we explained, because he overcame that sin, God put him on the highest point. If he didn't, the story could have been very different. ואם כן, המכירה הנה למצרים גרמה לי כי למחיה שלחני אלוהים לפניכם. That's why the verse makes sense, right? The verse first says, you sold me to Egypt. Why? And then he says, don't worry, because God put me in a high position to give you guys food, because it's all connected. The fact that he went to Egypt put him in that position, like we said. And the last point he says here, Rabbeinu Zal, our rabbis of blessed memory, says in Bereshit Rabbah, the Midrash, says over there, Amru, from this great confusion that the brothers had when they heard this revelation from Yosef, that he is Yosef, and all their sins came flowing back to the front of their minds, and everything that happened, they were reminded of everything, and it was staring them in their face, the terrible thing they did. We can learn from this. We can extract from this to our own day of judgment that every person will have at the end of his life. Right? We think we're going to live forever. We don't realize there's an expiration date. Time is ticking. Every second that passes is a second that you will not get back. It says, Rabbi Elazar, says, woe to us when we consider the day of judgment. Woe to us when we consider the day of rebuke. Yosef, just like Yosef, he said to his brothers, I am Yosef. The Torah says they weren't able to answer him. They were silenced. Huge, powerful, wise, intelligent people were unable to answer. Dumbfounded. Then therefore, when God is going to sit on the throne of judgment in front of us, how much more so will we be dumbfounded, silent, loss of words? As it says in a very powerful verse actually this is in the other verse. It says in Yeshaya, it says in Isaiah chapter 10 verse 3, what will you do on the day of accounting? The brothers thought the brothers thought when Yosef said, is my father still alive, that he was really meant reminding them of their sin, like we explained. That he's my father, not your father. You didn't treat me like your father. That's what the brothers heard. What are we going to do on the day of our judgment? When the way we live, the way we dwell, the way we do business, all these things are going to be accounted for. And it says now in Yov, very powerful verse in the Yov, book of Yov, chapter 37, verse 7, it says, and in the hand of every man he shall sign. What is it talking about? Look at Rashi on the spot over there. He says that on the day of judgment, when a person sinned, and who can escape sinning nowadays? Who can say I never sinned? On the day of judgment, I assume it's talking about sins that were not, that the person did not make teshuvah for, did not make full teshuvah for, because those sins get erased. But if a person dies with sins that he didn't atone for, didn't make teshuvah for in his life, it says that they're going to bring you a document. They're going to bring the sin right in front of your face in Shamayim, and they're going to make you, with your own hands, sign, yes, I did it. Consent. They're going to force you to do it. Why? Because then, at that point, whatever judgment, whatever punishment comes to you, they're going to say, you signed on it, my friend. You did it, you signed on it. You wrote your own punishment. You are your own witness in Shamayim. They don't need any other witnesses, because everything is the world of truth over there. Everything is revealed. You cannot lie. But they're going to solidify it and concretize it in front of your face by having you sign it. Lamar re'id darkech ma'asit, like it says in Jeremiah 2:23. Look at your ways, what you have done. ודעת רבי אלעזר שנכך כתבה לנו התורה שאחר נבהלו. Rabbi Elazar in this midrash therefore wants to tell us this is the main reason out of all the teachings you're going to hear about this week's Parashat. This is the main teaching that the Torah wants to drive home in your brain, that you should never forget on this moment when Yosef reveals himself to his brothers, that one day all will be revealed about what you did as well. You must be prepared for that. How do you do that? Stop sinning. Number one, you have to leave the sin. Regret what you did. Make for yourself a plan, fences, guards, alarms, whatever it is, so that you don't come to that sin again. And most importantly, you must learn Torah every single day. If you have oxygen in your lungs, you must be learning Torah. There's no excuse, especially for the men. Women also should be learning things that apply to them, but when I'm talking to men specifically, I mean, you must make a set time that you will not change for anything unless it's an extreme emergency. Every morning and every night. Whatever you can handle, whatever level you're holding, whether it be an hour, 30 minutes, even 5 minutes to sit down and learn Torah. Even 5 minutes. But those 5 minutes have to be fully dedicated. That means phone is off, phone is on the side. Everyone else cannot talk to you. It's you and the book, or even better, you and another person. That's much, much higher, and you should all be working to get that. Chavruta is very, very important. You must have someone to bounce ideas off. Now, it should be preferably someone on your level or someone a little bit higher than you, so that you don't make mistakes. But that is the key. If a Jew was not learning Torah every day, he's not doing what God put him on this world for. So, B'ezrat Hashem, we should all take this to heart, and so that when the day of judgment comes, we will not have to be so speechless like the brothers of Yosef were. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen.